Alright guys, we're going to make some worm buckets. We're not putting very many holes in the bottom. This is the second bucket that'll be in line. And what he's doing is just putting some drain holes in. Because when you're composting with worms, you do end up with some liquids that'll have to drain out. Otherwise your worms will drown. So there's some drain holes. We don't need very many. Again, you're not going to have sopping wet stuff in here. And if it is, it should drain right to the bottom and drain out. So that's the first step. This is going to be the bucket your worms go into. This is your bucket number 1. Now he's going to change the drill bit, and then we're going to put smaller holes on the sides of the bucket for side drainage as well, and to let some air flow in there, which will help control mold. I don't know if you need that, but today's our second project day. We just picked the moringa seed pods off the moringa trees, so we got that done this morning. That was interesting. Is that a small one? It looks a little big.
It's a smaller.
Okay.
Okay, you said
just a couple, yeah.
Like
just
that?
a couple there, yeah. Again, that's just for side drainage and to let some air in.
How many here?
Just do a couple around, Jim. You can space them, you know, one high, one low, one high, one low. That's fine. He's going by my instruction because I watched the video. So he's trusting me that I know what I'm doing. Not a good idea, but that's okay. We work with it. We're doing some good teamwork here the last couple days. I get to film, he gets to drill.
That doesn't sound good.
It sounds like your battery's dying.
No, it turns up.
Now these buckets we had already had some holes in. I don't remember what we were using them for, but there's already some holes in them, so that's why we're repurposing them.
It's for watering the guineas.
Okay.
That didn't work out.
No, because you didn't put real holes in it. We're also going to put a few holes near the top for airflow across the top as well. Again, just to keep mold and moisture under control. Because if you have this too airtight, you're going to have nasty odors. And I'm going to be keeping this in the house, so I don't want odors. Yeah, Jim's sitting in a chair, his back's sore from yesterday's work, so we're trying to be easy on him today. I really don't think you need a ton of holes on the bottom of the bucket, because once it's drained, it's drained. It's not going to continue to keep draining. But you also are going to need to remember to check the bucket that this will sit inside of. We're using all Firehouse sub buckets because we picked up a bunch of them, and it's what we have available that will stack within each other and fit perfectly. So now I'm going to have him Hemi the bucket. I'm going to have him the same size holes he did on the sides. We're going to have him put about 3 or 4 across here on both sides. But right in here, that's for upper airflow.
Okay, so there's going to be a lid on this?
Yeah. If I can find a lid. Just a couple, like 3 or 4 on each side. And if your worms are well fed, they shouldn't try and climb out of your bucket. We're going to line this with the newspaper and compost that I have. Oh, thank you, Ginger. See, that blue bin is full of fresh compost. So we're going to put some newspaper and compost in to get them started. And then we'll start drying some eggshells and give them some lettuce and stuff like that. Because we always have fresh produce that we can share. I might even throw some leaves and stuff in as one of our layers, because I know they'll break down leaves and eat those as well. We're almost done with this bucket, which isn't bad at all. Alright, that bucket's done. So, the next step would be to actually cut the bottom off of one of those buckets to add another layer. But because I'm not buying thousands of worms to get this started, we're going to work with this bucket and see how it goes. And Jim, you want to get that other red bucket I said we're not drilling? I'm going to show them how it goes together. I'm sitting on the floor here. It'd be really hard for me to get up versus Jim. That's the one without holes. So that's our bottom bucket. And the reason this has no holes is so that any liquids can drain from this bucket into this bucket. And it's going to be that simple. Now you have two buckets, but as you can see, this bucket doesn't go all the way down, which leaves you about a 3-inch gap down here for collecting liquids. Being in Florida, my liquids might actually dehydrate or dry out fairly quickly. I'm not sure. We'll see. But yeah, these sit inside each other really nicely. So now we're ready. You see the holes in the bottom, I hope? We're ready to put some newspaper, some compost, and worms in there. I'm going to get my supplies ready, and I'll bring you back for that process as well.
I think, yeah.
Hey guys, I'm back with you. Jim's now my cameraman. And what I'm doing is shredding some newspapers into the bottom of my bucket. And you see I have a good amount of newspaper in there. And we're going to keep adding a bit more because the more newspaper you have in there, they're actually going to, the worms are going to feed on them. So you want to have a good amount so that they don't go hungry until you start adding your fresh vegetables. And the newspapers help keep them moist without being sopping wet. So we're going to add a bit more. Then I'm going to wet the newspaper down just to the point where it does not wring out water. And then from there, we're going to add the compost. And I will probably mix the compost in with my hands, of course. I'm going to have dirty hands again today. And that will give them a great base to start their lives in. And I'm not sure, I had bought worms for fishing. One is night crawlers, one is red wigglers. We're going to try the red wigglers and see if they're still alive because they're in a container in the refrigerator. And if they are not, then we're going to put the night crawlers in here because I don't want to waste those worms. They're not the best composting worms, but they're what I have today. And until I can get to the store and get more red wigglers, Walmart carries them, guys. It's in the fishing section. They're a little pricey, but you just get one box and get your worm bin going, and you will do very, very well. Now, I did try this a few years ago, but I kept it outside on my porch, and it was just too hot and dry in Florida. I'm going to grab some water, and I'll be right back. In fact, where's my watering jug? Nowhere to be seen.
Pause it.
No, we can keep going. Alright, here's some water. This is fresh pond water. So it might even have better nutrients than my... I don't want to put my faucet water in because I have chlorinated water. Now, here's the key to your bottom bucket. You're going to see this in action if I can get the buckets apart. There we go. There's water in the bottom bucket. See that, guys? That's the purpose. This is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. Looks like it's nice and wet, but I think it needs to be a little wetter, so I'm going to grab some more water out of the pond.
Do worms like duckweed?
We're going to find out. That'll be one of my tests. One of my tests will actually be feeding some duckweed to the worms. And if they take to it, that'll be great because duckweed for us is plentiful. We have it in our pond, and we also collect it from a local lake. Now that's pretty good. It's nice and wet. I can wring it out just a little bit, and that's okay because I'm going to add some compost now. And over here is my compost bin. There we go. We're just going to look at this compost. It's really black compost. We just picked up 720 pounds of it from a Lakeland location, Lakeland, Florida. They have a system where it's all done organically. So I think this will be a great habitat for some worms. We want to make it so that there's enough room in there for them to come up to eat or go down into that newspaper to eat. And you see I'm stirring it in with my newspaper. Composting is a matter of mixing things, and with worms they're going to be able to be in the compost and eat the newspaper at the same time. And I think that is plenty to get them going. Alright, the only step left is to add your worms. And again, you add the worms you want. The red wigglers, if you're wanting composting worms, are the best to get. You don't have to mail order them. Go to your local Walmart. Look in the fishing section. If they have a refrigerator, in that refrigerator, they will have at least 2 types of worms. One's going to be your night crawlers. One's going to be your red wigglers. And it says red wigglers on the box. Pick yourself up some worms. Throw them in here. Put a lid on it. Take it back in the house and enjoy feeding your worms. And enjoy watching them become more and more dense in population. And when you go to change this out, you can literally take another bucket with holes. When you think they've eaten everything in here, put another bucket with holes on top and start putting food in, newspaper in, and they will migrate up through the buckets. Or you can just literally take the compost and the worms out and sort the worms out and put them in a fresh bucket, or dump your compost in a container, sort the worms out, and put the worms in a fresh bed of newspaper and compost like I've done here. And the only other thing left to do is to throw some greens on there. And I'm going to take a scoop of duckweed just to throw some extra greens on there. If I can get some. It's pretty thin on the pond already. Alright guys, this is duckweed. Look at that. See how fine and little that is? That is great food for a worm. Look around your local ponds. If it has what looks like green scum, it's probably duckweed. And what it is just a tiny little leaf that multiplies very rapidly. Take yourself a little fishing net like for an aquarium. Get yourself a couple scoops in a baggie, bring it home and throw it in there. That's food. I have another bucket I can get really big handfuls of. I'm going to add that too. Yeah, that is very thick in the bucket. I think it's spreading in the bucket finally. I think I finally got successful in growing duckweed. This is duckweed. Here's a better view. Look how much that is. This will feed the worms for a few days, maybe to even a week. And it is very wet. And it smells like stinky pond water. But it will compost beautifully. The worms will eat this because it's so fine. When you're feeding your worms, consider taking anything, whether it's lettuce, tomatoes, whatever you're giving them, and research what they eat, because they don't eat just everything. Put it through a food processor or your blender and chop it up as fine as you can. Dry out some eggshells, chop those up in a food processor and put that in as well. Feed your worms what they'll eat, not what you have conveniently available. Lettuce, carrots, potatoes are all good food. Green beans, peas, pretty much what we eat, but they're not going to eat things like citrus. So I don't believe you should be putting citrus in your worm bin, or even onions. But do some research on that and you can verify that information. But that's it for the worm bin. The only thing left for me to do is see if I have any live worms other than the night crawlers, because they're definitely alive. And if the red wigglers are alive, I'm going to put them in here. If the night crawlers do not go in here, I'm going to put them in the blue bin. It will not hurt me to throw a couple night crawlers in here, or even one of these containers, just to keep them alive. I can put some compost in here, some wet newspaper, and throw my night crawlers in here. It doesn't have to be complicated. It can be as simple as you make it. The key is with the red wigglers, you want them to multiply, you want them to get a heavier population and do more composting faster. So that's my update on, or my process on taking care of a worm bin and making a worm bin. And if you like what I'm doing, give me a like, share and subscribe to my channel, and we'll try and keep getting you some really cool projects like this, as well as the canning, the pressure cooking, and the off-grid, and the garden. We got a lot going on around here all the time. Stay in touch and God bless.